All right, we're back with another Osceola Tailgate pregame show. Got the cast of regulars, former FSU offensive lineman and Osceola football analyst Mark Salva, and of course Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein. And right now we're without JP Peterson, our Tampa sports radio host. He is dealing with divorce lawyers and all kinds of things. They're not talking. No, I'm talking about Tom Brady. JP.
What? Wait, what?
He's busy talking about divorce lawyers.
Wait, wonder why he said that to me like 2 weeks ago. Oh man, you just threw me some red meat, man.
Absolutely.
Where's JP?
No, I'm talking about all the things that are going on in Tampa are Tom Brady relationship related.
Oh man.
So we're going to actually, I was hoping that we would have him on so he could actually talk some football this week. But hey, guys, it is a huge week in the ACC Atlantic. Florida State, 4-1, travels to take on 14th ranked NC State at night in Carter Finley Stadium in an 8 p.m. game. Obviously, with both Clemson and Syracuse still undefeated in a conference play. It's a huge game for Florida State to stay in contention for a chance at playing in the ACC title game, particularly with Clemson and Syracuse both in front of it after the NC State game. But first, guys, before we work our way forward, Fish, I have not had a chance to get your thoughts on the Wake Forest game. Don't want to rehash it in totality, but just kind of what was your takeaway coming out of Wake Forest?
Yeah, I think Mark will agree with this. I was surprised at how much they were pretty much physically manhandled up front with the O-line and D-line, especially the way FSU's played in the first four or five games. I can't even remember how many games they played, but the O-line not playing up to par and the D-line at certain points of the game until Verse came in, they were controlled. Wake Forest controlled that, and we've talked about this a million times. Games are won and lost in the trenches, and also the quarterback play. Those when you don't play well in the O-line and D-line, and you could blame the refs, you could blame this person, that play, you're not going to win a lot of ball games if you don't have success up front. And that was the biggest takeaway I took from the game, was how those guys played up front.
Mark, what did you think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, it was the intensity and the energy coming into the game. It just wasn't there like it has been the first couple games to me. And then they kind of turned it on because scheme-wise, they didn't do anything very different in the second half than they did in the first half. And to me, it was just kind of they just didn't match the intensity for whatever reason. And look, the attitudes of teams wane week to week. It's hard to be up for every game. Coach Bowers famously said that, right? It's hard to get up every week for every game. And look, that 4-game run before was pretty intense. I mean, 2 road games. LSU, the Louisville game was an intense game. So yeah, we had a lull, and I hope it was an anomaly because this week coming in, NC State's going to bring it. They always do. I said it during the sidelines podcast that we did, that FSU needs to be ready to get into a fist fight this week. Figuratively, it's going to be one of those games, especially at night at Carter Finley. So they just need to come with a little bit more energy for sure and match the intensity that they're going to face right out of the gate.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. I was a little bit surprised, like you said, Fish, that the Wake Forest had success up front like it did, particularly running the ball against Florida State. Then Florida State having issues running the ball itself, something they've done very good with Florida State since Mike Norvell has taken over, behind some worse offensive lines, in my opinion, against some better defenses. But at the end of the day, as bad as they played, as we've talked about on Seminole sidelines, they're a holding penalty away from being first and goal to tie up the ball game. As bad as they played, and they played the best team of the year and played their worst game of the year. So if I take anything positive from it, is that the resolve that we've seen in games like Louisville is certainly something that has been instilled in these kids through Mike and his staff. And, so I walked out of there, feeling good about that, but obviously they've got some work to do because as we move forward in NC State, and typically we start with the opposing team's offense, but that's not what makes NC State go. It's their defense, and Florida State does have to regroup and get ready for this game because it's by far, both statistically, and I'm sure you agree with this, Mark and Fish, based off what you see on film, TV copy, whatever you're watching, this is the best defense Florida State's faced by far. NC State runs a 3-3-5, 3-5-3, Mark, whatever you want to call it. We're going to get you to kind of break down what they do, but just to give you guys some stats, 16th in rushing defense, 28th in pass defense, 19th in scoring defense. Pretty good defense they've got there at NC State under Tony Gibson and Dave Doran's 10th year in Raleigh. They don't allow many big plays, Mark. That's what Florida State does well offensively. I know we were talking about the fact that you're not crazy about every stat and trying to overanalyze everything, but it's going to be a challenge for Florida State's offense. They're going to have to find big plays. They've shown that they have to have them to win, and they could not run the ball consistently against Wake Forest, and it's going to be a challenge to do that against NC State. But I'm going to let you kind of take over, Mark, and talk to us a little about the NC State defense.
Yeah, well, stats tell part of the story.
Right.
For us, it's about matchups. And, like with Wake last week, they did not have, going into the game, they didn't have a strong rushing offense or rushing defense, and they dominated us on both sides of that. Not so much on the rushing defense versus our offense part. We did hit some big plays, but not real consistent control of the game through the running game. So those stats only tell part of the story. It's about matchups. And we seem to kind of struggle a little bit more versus teams that run a 3-man line, right? And an odd front and multiple linebackers. So in this case, it's a 3-5-3 or 3-3-5, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Bottom line is they got 3 down linemen. They've got a lot of runners and hitters on that second level. And so what makes that problematic for a lot of teams is that the permutations of where you can put guys and where you can send guys and how you send them is much more less defined than if you have a 4 down lineman situation. When you have a 3 down lineman situation, it's a lot more ambiguous on the second level. It requires a lot of communication. It requires a lot of, knowing where people are, especially when we want to pull guys across the line of scrimmage and run that counter play or that G down play. We want to block down and pull guys a lot. Well, the guys pulling across the formation need to know where these linebackers are, because what they're going to end up doing, like when last week when Jordan fumbled the ball on that quarterback counter, it really set up nice because the defensive tackle, the down lineman, was inside, and we were able to block down on it. Well, that meant that the 2 pullers were going to be pulling on linebackers, scraping over the top, right? Well, linebackers are pretty agile compared to offensive linemen especially. And so now, you've got guys like Dimitri Emmanuel or Dylan Gibbons having to readjust on their feet and block a moving target as opposed to a down lineman kicking out or logging, right? Yep. And so that's a little problematic for us because they're not the most nimble guys. And so, a lot of it has to do with timing, and it's going to have to do with, their eyes. It has to do with communication. The tackle on that side needs to tell them, where the alignment is of those linebackers so they know where to put their eyes when they're pulling, doing these things. So when I say matchups are an issue, we seem to struggle more against these kind of fronts because guys come from all over the place. We need to be really on the details, communicating where guys are lining up so we can execute not only in the running game with our favorite plays, but also in the passing game, protecting against the blitz. Now, they have the capability to bring just 4. They have the capability to bring as many as 8, right? And so everybody needs to be alert where these guys are. Who's going to be the guy that comes free if they bring more than we can block? And the quarterback's got to be coordinated along with the back. Where do we go with the ball if this guy comes or that guy comes? So a lot of communication is going to have to happen. These guys can run on the second level. They are really good tacklers. They tend to keep everything in front of them. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But what worries me more than anything is free runners in the passing game and the running game. Can we communicate and execute up front to give our skill guys who are really good get them in the places they need to be so they can use their talent and get big plays on the offense.
Well, to your point, bringing pressure from all over the place, they do have three of the best linebackers in the ACC. I would imagine the best linebacker core in the ACC, maybe even the country. But to your point, Mark, they have three players that are tied for team lead in quarterback hurries, and they come from three different levels of the defense. Devin Van, a defensive end, Tanner Engel, a safety, and Drake Thomas, a linebacker. Number one, what kind of issues, eye discipline, what kind of issues does that cause for the offensive line? And conversely, with them bringing pressure everywhere, what kind of opportunities does that create for Florida State's offense?
Yeah, so the big thing is communication, the backs, the QB, the line. Everybody's got to be coordinated. And when you see a lineman and a quarterback point, they're setting the protection, right? They're saying, okay, us five are going to block these fives back. You've got this guy or that guy. Quarterback, if both of them come, we're throwing hot, or you've got an outlet here or something like that. So all that's got to be really on point coordinated, right? If we can pick up the blitz, and if we do keep in a tight end or a back to block, right, there's an opportunity to head them up, and that puts you on one-on-one situations on the outside for our receivers. The other part of this that you can do is if you free release people, if you have a back pretend to block and slip out, you can slip a guy out uncovered. Same thing with a tight end. If we show like we're blocking 7 and send out 5, that could mean there are guys running free if Jordan can get the ball off. So there's opportunities there if you're smart about how you do it. If you can predict kind of what they're wanting to do, there's opportunities in the passing game for sure. Hey, back in the day, we used to love when people sent the blitz because we knew that our quarterbacks knew where to go with the ball, and we had great matchups on the outside. I remember the year we won the championship in '93, Notre Dame had just lost. We had just lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame lost that week. We played NC State. And NC State, they were going to blitz every down. And they did blitz us every down, and we were loving it because I think we ended up winning like 70-3 or something like that. We scored a ton of touchdowns against them, and they were blitzing like crazy. We were picking up the blitz, and Charlie was throwing darts. That's the opportunity that's there if you can pick up the blitz and know where to go with the ball. And those are the opportunities that present themselves. The other part of it too in the running game, if we like to block down and kick out and seal aside and kick out aside, there are seams there if you can catch the blitz and you can have the blitz inside out, and run inside these kickouts and these down blocks. There are seams versus the blitz in the running game. So those are the opportunities. But where you get in trouble is if there's no communication and you think that he has them and I think that I got them, or vice versa. Guys you end up blocking nobody. Two guys end up blocking nobody, and it looks like a train wreck. And that can happen both in the running game and the passing game. So there's got to be really, really clear communication and understanding of what it is we're trying to do. You remember Joe Lee Dunn? Fish, you remember Joe Lee Dunn, right? Back in the day. This is Joe Lee Dunn's defense. Joe Lee Dunn used to just send all kinds of blitzes and all, just a real big pressure package, and the best way to handle that is to gap block everything or zone block everything. Right? I don't know what other options you have. You don't want a man block. That's what you don't want to do, because then you start getting confused. But if you can take care of H gap or, either through the zone or just gap blocking, there are lots of seams there and lots of opportunities to make plays.
Fish, what are you thinking about NC State's defense and how Florida State will go about attacking that defense?
Yeah, anytime you play a defense that's as aggressive as they are, you always have concerns, especially FSU. The tackles struggled a little last week, so you have those concerns, especially being on the road, being loud. There's going to be lack of communication with the loud, the crowd being really loud. So you're going to have mess ups just from that standpoint, that if these guys can't hear what the quarterback's calling or what they're calling up front. So you don't want to have those misassignments from being on the road. That's my concern going into this game, especially with the defense that's as aggressive as they are, because they're going to get after it on that side of the ball. You guys said this is the best defense they faced. I agree. They're very aggressive up front, and they create a lot of chaos, and that's what you don't want to have to deal with when you're on the other side of the ball. So if FSU can just block well enough, they have to play better than they did last week, or they're going to have a lot of problems. But if they can fix some of those issues, I think they will have some success on offense.
Yeah, and it really is strength on strength. I think that Florida, as much as we thought the defense might be a strength for Florida State coming into the season, looks like the offense has just been the strength through 4 or 5 ball games, and obviously defense is a strength for NC State.
Well, let me say this too. And Fish touched on it a little bit. Our offensive tackles definitely have to play better. I think they need to, and it's funny. I heard Atkins say this during his press conference. They got to be a little more reactive than proactive than reactive. And I 100% agree. I mean, when I see indecision or guys late on their movement to block somebody and they're not in good positions, it's because there's indecision there. And you got to take out that indecision from your schemes. It doesn't need to be all that. If this, then that. It just needs to be, it's the, for instance, Turner time. Hey, I got the B gap. I got the inside. Whoever shows up there, I'm going 100 miles an hour in that gap. And if the guy that's lined up there is not there anymore, there's somebody going to replace them. And I just need to know that's who I'm blocking, right? That takes out all the indecision and have to redirect a bunch. And so we need to put those guys in position. I know he knows this. I know Alex knows this. And that he alluded to it. And hopefully he's going to get it fixed. Because that part of it needs to be shored up for sure.
How much does a communication in a game like this, being on the road, concern you, Mark? Like you've been on the road. I mean, NC State's probably one of the tougher places that you play on a night game in the ACC. It's a loud. I mean, JP's been there too, so he'll be able to talk about it. But how much of that communication from the tackles? Knowing what if they're indecisive in a game like this, you could have it could be a mess.
It can be that, and that's why you try to take out as much of that as you can going into the game. There needs to be in your preparation leading into the game to say, all right, we're going to take the if and out of it. We're just going to go with this and live with whatever the result is. Because look, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get your guys in the best position possible, right? That's why you have so many rules, if this, then that kind of thing, all the communications, because you want to make sure you're blocking big guys on big guys, right? And little guys on little guys. In other words, backs on linebackers, linemen on linemen, right? And that's what you're trying to facilitate. And of course, defensive alignments dictate a lot of that. What you might need to do sometimes, though, in a situation like this is say, you know what, backs, sometimes you're going to have to block a defensive end. Linemen, sometimes you're going to be on a linebacker or a DB. And if we can't make it to where, if the communication is so difficult that we can't change it up on the fly, then so be it. You just got to go with what you got to go with, right? It's because there are situations where it can be better, but if communication becomes an issue, then we'll live with what we get and we'll still execute anyways. Y'all following me on that? Yeah. I mean, it's just, and that's what you're going to get. Sometimes you're not always going to get the ideal situation and be able to communicate calls and stuff to match up guys in the best situations.
Well, it's going to be fascinating. Florida State's got one of the best big play offenses in college football. NC State's one of the best at not giving up big plays. NC State's one of the best defenses on third down in college football. Florida State's one of the best offenses on third down in college football. Certainly, I think that's probably going to be the key matchup as far as two sides of the ball. I think if Florida State's offense and NC State's defense will kind of dictate who does what. Listen. And I think you're right. I think communication is going to be hard. That stadium is going to be loud. NC State does not like Florida State. It's kind of turned into the secondary rivalry outside of obviously Miami, Clemson, and Florida. But it will be 8 p.m. at night, and it'll be wild. And we can now welcome in one of the busiest men in Tampa. He has removed himself from the days of our lives that has become sports talk radio in Tampa and around the NFL. JP, we were hoping you would join us from the get-go because we wanted to give you a break from all of the divorce talk so you could actually talk about football.
Wow, I tell you what, though, we broke the story weeks ago, on Giselle and Tom, because we have those great sources at the Davis Island Coffee Bar. Those Lululemon women never get it wrong, ever. So yes, I think for Tom though, everything is going to let the lawyers handle it. He's got everything settled with his kids now. He knows where everything's going. So if there's anybody that can be, can compartmentalize everything, it's Tom freaking Brady. So yes, let's talk some football here.
Ready to go football. All right. So just so you know, we've just got through breaking down the NC State defense versus FSU offense matchup. And now we're going to switch over to FSU's defense versus Devin Leary and NC State's offense, which really, NC State's offense has been rather pedestrian. They are either right about mid-pack or back of the pack in just about every major offensive category. I don't think it's been the offense that they thought it was going to be coming into the season. Devin Leary was predicted to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he's still not bad. 108 of 172 for 10 touchdowns, 3 INTs. But they've struggled to run the ball. 94th in the FBS, 94th overall, 101st in rushing versus FBS opponents, 66 passing, 94th in total offense. If you factor out their game against Charleston Southern, just give me your thoughts on NC State's offense and Devin Leary.
Hey, you could go, JP. It's your turn.
Oh no, go ahead, Fish. Before we start, can I just have to make notice of something that's right over your right shoulder, Pat. My former backup quarterback, the great Danny McManus, who I called Fred for the first 3 years he was. Yes, Danny. My old friend Danny McManus, who was my backup in high school. So I had to throw a little love out to my man. Isn't that Bobby telling him to run a play that they haven't run in like 3 months
35
against Miami? I think so.
Oh, I still remember the day Coach Bowden was looking for Pete Patton on the sideline, and Pete hadn't played like in 3 years.
I mean, JP, do you see my background? There's Danny with his hand on my butt right there.
Yeah, this is a Danny McManus.
You're smiling. You must have liked that.
This is a Danny McManus heavy show. Hey, by the way, speaking of Danny McManus, and I know we're gonna let JP talk about the NC State offense, but I'll let Mark save it because he has a little analogy about Devin Leary, who Devin Leary reminds him of. But JP, take it away on NC State offense versus Florida State defense.
Well, I'll say Devin Leary has not been as advertised, right? Kind of like Van Dyke in Miami. And, it's interesting when, from year to year, especially in college football, hell, I'm old enough to remember Dan Marino when everybody said he sucked in his senior year. Well, he lost his number one tailback and his top 3 receivers. And suddenly in the next year, Dan Marino sucks and gets drafted at the bottom of the first round. The rest is history. From year to year, especially now with the transfer portal, you lose receivers, you lose, offensive linemen, you lose continuity, coaching, all things, not just at NC State, but everywhere. And things change. Quarterbacks look way different in certain other situations. So I don't know how much worse Devin Leary is as opposed to what's around him. But to me, it's more about who can play for FSU. Is Lovett going to be able to play? Watching Jared Verse last week limp onto the field with that big knee brace, make a play, limp back off the field, then limp back on the field. I've never seen anything like it. He looked like he could barely run as he runs on the field, and then he makes a play. The kid's amazing.
Who was the famous Nick that came out of the locker room at halftime? Was it
Bernard Williams?
Bernard King.
Bernard King.
Willis.
Yes,
Willis, yeah.
Willis Reed.
Right?
Willis Reed.
That was it.
Yeah,
Willis Reed.
The great Willis Reed game. Yes. PT Willis. No, Willis Reed. It was definitely him. And yeah, it was weird because he could barely run on the field. And then he makes, he's coming off the edge, making a sack. So you guys be able to tell me, is Lovett playing? Is Verse playing? What's the health of our team at this point? What do you see in practice?
Verse, Mike talked about Verse and said that he looks like he's ready to roll. So I'm expecting him to play. Gaynor may or may not be back. He was at practice.
Good.
Fabian is listed on the depth chart, but I don't know. We'll find out on Saturday night whether it means anything. Obviously, one of the things that we have to be careful about in covering the team is Mike has if he had talked about a kid publicly in any given week, but he did talk about Verse and Gaynor, and hopefully those two guys will be back. I do think the Gainer having back would add some depth they'll need at linebacker. But yeah, there's no doubt when they get Fabian back, if he's back this week, that would certainly be of huge benefit. And of course, because they didn't hold up very good against the run against Wake Forest without him, so certainly they need him back. He's a difference maker for that defense. But listen, Mark,
I don't think NC State's going to score. I can't see them scoring more if those guys play more than 21, 24 points. So now it comes down to the FSU offense. Can they put some more points on the board? I was just, sitting at 50-yard line, 23 rows up with the fam this past week, just really disappointed at the lack of execution, the multiple mistakes. Just didn't seem to have the same fight as Wake Forest did. They wanted it more than our team did. So I think, what team do we see show up? I think this is a huge test from a culture standpoint. Last week was not a great performance. It wasn't their best. It was media. It had shades of, the Willie Taggart era, dare I say, with all the penalties and the key penalties and the key mistakes and the kicking game. Can't do that against good teams. And if that team shows up against NC State, FSU has no choice. So I'll be very interested to see how focused, how much fight they have, how much, just how much energy they have for this game.
Yeah, I think we're all hoping this does not come down to a field goal.
Yeah.
I think we can all share that. But Fish, you were about to say something?
Yeah, Pat, you bring that up because I was going to bring that up, and I think you guys can agree. In a game that's going to be low scoring, I feel it's going to be a low scoring game. The kickoffs out of bounds, field position with the punter, turnovers.
Kicking game penalties.
The kicking game is Mike Norvell. If it's 4th and 8 from the 28-yard line, does he have to go for it because he doesn't have trust in Fitzgerald to go out? And those 3 points could be huge in the game. That's where at the end of the game, you have to go. You have to now have it's become a 2-possession game at the end of the game if the guy makes a field goal, it's a 1-possession game. 6 and 9 or 5 and 8. It's a big difference at the end of the game when maybe you don't have timeouts or you're on the road. So much goes in. Those little things add up in a game like this. And you don't want to kick the ball out of bounds and give an NC State offense that struggles the ball on the 40-yard line to start a drive. You don't want to have a shank punt. Does NC State get a turnover where it's on your side of the field? Those little things are what can cause this game to get out of hand.
Well,
NC State,
we're all talking about the same thing. It's winning football.
Yep.
Right. Winning football is well coached. Penalties, turnovers, execution, kicking game.
Yep.
Things that were on the marquees during the Bowdere. Those things, Seminole Law and Seminole Pride. We had 2 signs in our meeting room, and it was all about no penalties, no missed assignments. Kicking game, the execution, and those are the staples of winning football. And for 4 games, we did those things, and for 1 game, we didn't, and we paid the price. And so that's what it comes down to. And JP, you said it too. Can we match the intensity at the beginning of the game and not have to wait till halftime to get it?
Well, I will say this: those kickoff out of bounds, I think that's the most maddening thing I see in college football. I don't understand how you hit a kick that bad, and that there is a way that the coach and the kicker can overcome it. If you've got a guy that's a right-legged kicker and he turns the ball over to the left, move him to the right hash and let him kick off. That's avoidable by the kicker, and it's avoidable by the coaching. And listen, I'm not talking about Florida State. I'm just talking about it in general. That is a maddening.
I saw it in the NFL this week.
I'll tell you what drives me more than that is are pushing the backs on returns. Nothing maddens me more than getting a 40-yard return and somebody push somebody in the back when the back is, you can see his back and you still push him. That drives me nuts.
And a lot of times
you go from starting on the 50-yard line to starting on the 10.
And a lot of that
hitting yardage, that stuff drives me nuts.
And Mark, a lot of times it's away from the play. That's what makes it even worse. It had no effect on the play at all.
It's just players that don't normally play wanting to get their hands on somebody to make a block or do something when they should just not do it. But look, I don't know. Do we have another kicker?
They've got a kicker. I can't remember his name. Number 43. In practice, he kicks that ball out of the damn end zone. I mean, he's got a cannon for a leg. Only thing I can think, he's a freshman. I'm sure they're trying to save him. But
at this point, I mean, did you see?
In practice, he kicks bombs. Now, he doesn't kick field goals. That's 97, Shahari, or I can't remember Aiden's or how to pronounce Aiden's last name. But anyway, 43 has worked in kickoffs in practice. He's got a really strong leg. I've never seen him kick a field goal though, but before I want to circle back to Mark, get off special teams for a second. We were talking about the NC State offense and Devin Leary. He reminds you of somebody. I want you to tell FSU fans who it is.
Well, I was watching the Clemson game last week, and I'm watching this guy who's 6'1-ish, 6'2-ish, got a rocket arm, so, just kind of nimble in the pocket, and I'm like looking at him. He's got a lot of fight in him. I'm saying to myself, that's Danny McManus, man. That guy reminds me of Danny McManus a lot, because he does have a great arm,
This has become the Danny McManus appreciation tailgate.
Well, no, it is. And I don't say that lightly either. I don't, because obviously Fred is my favorite quarterback of all time.
He's my favorite Florida State quarterback.
Hey, anybody that can get mine.
Fred is my quarterback, and he's JP's quarterback. I mean, he's our quarterback, right? And,
I don't know, Brad Johnson too. Yeah. That's a tough one.
Hey, Pat, anybody that could get that close to Mark without him kicking their butt, there's a good relationship going. Look at that picture. I mean, damn.
There's a lot of good stories in relation to
that. Hey, that looks like right before the 4th and 21 pass to Ronald Lewis, right?
For the win, 31-28, maybe.
Yeah, you show players that picture today. They're like, "What are you guys calling there?"
I was there.
I had been in a car accident the night before that game in Phoenix, and went to that game with one of the worst concussions of all time.
I can tell you, I was never as sore after a game than I was after that game, because that guy I'm lined up against right there, Lawrence Pete, that dude was strong, man.
Badass Nebraska teams, not like the one
they were physical, and it was Danny threw an interception in that game right on the sideline, and I was running. I had a beat on the guy. I was getting ready to make the tackle on an interception, and Neil Smith, right, the Hall of Fame NFL defensive end, circled around and hit me right under the chin, and I went flying. I mean, blindside shot, which would be targeting today, right? It would be targeting. I lost a lot of brain cells on that hit, I can tell you. And I slid across the stripe. So the week before, there was a U2 concert on that field, and that whole field was painted. And so that big 3-foot stripe that was the out of bounds was a Brillo pad. It was a white Brillo pad. And I slid across it of course, I'm wearing a half shirt, right? And my side was like a hamburger the rest of the game. And I mean, it was brutal. I've never been so sore after a game than that game. Whew.
Oh, they had some corn-fed boys back in the day, man. Nebraska did. Whoa, huge.
Yeah.
Listen,
so he's the modern day Danny McManus.
I think.
Yeah, Devin Leary can throw it, but you get a little pressure on him, which hopefully Verse can play and to push that pocket up the middle. Again, it's a passing game that has not looked great this year. So.
What we can't let him do is get the running game going. They like to run that outside zone play. And again, we talk about matchups. Traditionally, we have not done well with those teams. And in the past, it's because our linebackers have not been able to fill those gaps when they try to run that wide run and they cut it back. And we have guys out of position trying to arm tackle, and it hasn't worked out well. That we seem to have gotten that corrected with Bethune and Kalen DeLoach, and even Lundy is a little bit better than he was. It'd be nice if Amari Gaynor can come back and play, but if we let them get the running game going, that opens up their play action passing game and their boot game, and we don't need to let that happen. So I think the priority has to be, we got to stop the run, make them one dimensional. Their receiving core is not the best. They're missing some guys. They don't have that guy from last year. I forget his name, like Easy or something. Yeah. Right. Yeah, they don't have that guy. They have the one guy that he has a really good timing relationship with, but the rest of them don't seem to be all that whatever. So we got to make them one-dimensional.
Yeah, it's a whole new cast of characters at the skill positions. They got new running back, Demo Sumo. I can't pronounce his last name. He's fourth in the ACC in yards per carry, but only has 265 yards. Jordan Houston is back, but he's carried the ball twice as much already this year as he did last year. And then, of course, who you're talking about, receiver Thayer Thomas, who's one of the best receivers in NC State history. He's been targeted 20% of the time, far more than anybody else on the roster. 24 catches, 301 yards, and then it's Devin Carter and Keon Lassane are the second and third leading receivers. But where they have been really good is on third down. They are converting 45% of their third down conversions this year. And what they have done a really good job of, as bad as all the other stats are, Mark, for them offensively, they've done a great job of keeping Devin Leary clean. They've only allowed 16 pressures and 7 sacks so far this year. So it's a mix on the offensive line of young guys and old guys. They have 83 career starts between the 5, 66 coming from Grant Gibson, their center, who's an all-ACC type player, and Dylan McMahon, their right guard. But a lot of new faces. I do want to ask you guys this question. Again, a team that is struggling to run the ball is NC State. After watching Florida State against Wake Forest, how concerned are you about what NC State could potentially do on the ground?
Well, I'm concerned because of our depth situation up front.
Yeah.
That's the concern. If we're playing, if Jarrett Jackson and Ray and Coop, because I don't feel like Lovett's going to get in the game. I still think he might be a little bit away, but if those guys are playing a significant amount of snaps, that can be problematic for us, so McClendon and Verse and obviously Farmer, those guys are going to have to step up and really, number one, set the edge. Farmer's going to have to, be impactful inside. I feel like we're playing with guys that are just, not quite there yet.
Growing into it, right? Trying to grow into it anyway.
I mean, we're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel of our depth on the defensive line, and that worries me about them being able to get the running game going. Yeah,
and you really would like to see Jarrett Jackson. Jarrett Jackson's got some potential. I would like to see him be a little bit more productive. I think we talked a little bit about Seminole sidelines. We didn't think McClendon and Briggs were as productive against Wake Forest as we thought they would be. Burst looked outstanding in his 23 snaps, but guys, how do you attack if you're Florida State's defense? How do you attack this offense?
Do you walk up a safety to help out the linebackers and expose yourself a little bit in the back end there, and knowing that their receivers are not the best? And I don't know. Do you load the box a little bit more to force them to pass the ball? I don't know. What do you guys think? I agree with Mark. You can't let them get the running game going, because then they got everything at their disposal. But you also don't want to give up big plays when you're playing what I think, Fish, I would agree, is going to be a tight 21-17 type game.
I mean, it looks like Fuller is kind of liking bringing some pressure from the secondary. Shane Brown and Keem Dent and those guys coming on blitzes and being more in proximity of the box. Seems like he's kind of allowed that to happen a little bit more. Seems like he's starting to like that a little bit. So there's a little bit of a trend developing there. So it'll be interesting to see if that expands a little bit, if he gets a little more creative in some of the ways that he gets those guys involved in a little closer to the ball. I agree, JP, if they're not as proficient on the outside, we can maybe take a few more risks. Just make the plays. My gosh. I mean, Roto Green right there for and the guy makes an unbelievable catch. Greedy Vance right there. Guy makes an unbelievable catch. We got to
throw it right to him. He threw it right to him.
Right?
I was screaming. I'm like, how do you miss that? He threw it right to you. That was the game
it's
right
exactly
there.
What we wanted, because up to that point against that, and I talked about this on sidelines. Up to that point, they were doing that 3 on one side, 1 receiver on the other. And we were playing 2 deep shells, and he kept going to that single receiver side. We finally rotate a safety down. And so, Hartman goes to the 3 receiver side, and we have a guy right there, Greedy Vance, and he throws it. Oh, there's Greedy Vance. And we had exactly what we wanted. He give Fuller credit. He made the adjustment, got exactly what we wanted, had it covered, and they made that play. I mean, it's just you
Unbelievable.
want to pull your hair out on that stuff. As a
Oh.
coach, you're going, it's exactly what I wanted, you know, and you
Yeah.
didn't get it. So we got it. If this happens Saturday, we got guys in
Got to make
position.
the play.
Got to make the play.
Got to make the play.
Hey, I've got one last question for anybody that really watched the Clemson game. One of the things that did surprise me about NC State's offense was they had 5 drives out of 11 of 8 plays or more against Clemson, including 3 that were 10 plays or more. They had not really had that kind of sustained offensive success at any point during the season up until that point. Were you guys surprised that they were able to sustain those drives against Clemson?
Yeah, I was, because their offense, it's very difficult to sustain drives. You're asking, especially at the college level, you're asking guys not to make one mistake. And if there's a holding penalty or a procedure penalty, all of a sudden you're in a longer situation as far as yardage and stuff. It becomes harder to score. Teams score now in 3, 4, 5 plays when it's 10, 12, 14 plays. You're asking a college kid not to get a holding penalty or an offensive pass interference or something goes wrong. It's very difficult to sustain drives now, unless you have a quarterback that is just super accurate and you can trust that guy not to make mistakes. Hartman's that guy actually last week that they can sustain drives and overcome a mistake where not a lot of teams can. So I was surprised.
My concern is they're going to have some confidence on offense that they, similar to what Wake did against Clemson and got kind of some confidence in that run game, right? I mean, you do it against Clemson, you feel a little bit better about yourself, right?
Yeah, if you're NC State and you just play that Clemson defensive line and then you put on our film, we're not that, right? So they're going to go.
Nobody is.
Who is the question? But they're going to go in with a little confidence, thinking they're going to be able to block us, and we need to dispel that notion early and often.
Yeah, Lovett's such a big loss. I never thought how much of a loss he would be, but it was even in the Louisville game. Without him, they're a different team up the middle as far as running against. I mean, before that game, they were really tough before he got injured. And even LSU struggled, and they could run the ball. These teams struggled up the middle. It's just surprising that he's that big of a loss. I thought he was a good player, but I didn't think there was that much of a drop off between him and the backup.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we thought that the defensive. I mean, I said maybe I'm wrong, but not y'all. I thought the defensive line, particularly the tackles, were going to be too deep, and as you said, the drop off is more than I think I anticipated. We saw a lot of good things, and listen, I thought Farmer played much better against Wake Forest than he did against Louisville. So maybe Jarrett Jackson steps up this game, or
Well, see, here's the thing, though. They don't have to be Lovett. They just need to occupy blockers and let our linebackers play.
Yeah, they got to be functional.
Yeah, if they can occupy blockers, we know Cooper can. If we get those other guys to occupy, if 2 guys can occupy 4, then we can have Bethune and Deloach cleaning, running, making plays, getting seams and making tackles. That's all we need them to do. They don't have to, and generates a little bit of a pass rush. So, it's they don't have to be Lovett, but they just need to be effective.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And as we close out the preview portion of the show, I just want to come full circle. We talked a little bit about Florida State's kicking woes, and if this came down to a kick, NC State's kicker is 8 of 9. So
everybody's got to kick one.
So just like last week, our kicker is due to make one. Their kicker is due to miss one. You got to hope there's some karma on your side in that regard.
Their kicker did miss one too, didn't he?
He did, and we missed 2, I believe. The last one I don't count. I mean, it was 55 yards. You blew it. You got to delay a game, whatever.
How the hell we get a delay a game there? Oh my God!
Because you burned all your other timeouts, and you obviously didn't.
Well, 2 guys running on the field late, like they didn't know they were on field goal team. What the hell?
And we had to call a timeout in I don't know if it was the first half or second, but probably the first half, so I'm probably wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I think we called a timeout in the first half because we had 10 guys on the goal line. So
Brutal.
But anyway, so we said we weren't going to rehash Wake Forest. All right, so we're going to come back with our picks in a minute for the Florida State-North Carolina game. But now is kind of when we take a look at the bigger picture in college football. and of course, we all spent a lot of time following it. Guys, the news of the week, and one that my chin still hits the floor on, Wisconsin fires Paul Chryst Sunday or Monday. A guy that has only had 2 seasons where he didn't win 10 games. Obviously, I don't count 2020. They were 4-3, but his other 2 worst seasons were 9-4, 8-5. All the rest of his seasons were 10 or more wins. Mark and Fish, I know y'all have some really definitive ideas about why this happened, but how did we reach a point in college football where a guy that's won close to 75% of his games at a place like Wisconsin gets fired? And tell me why they fired him.
Go ahead, Fish.
I think the number one reason they fired him is Jim Leonhard. Jim Leonhard's one of the top defensive coordinators in college football. He's at the point where Dave Aranda was. They had lost Dave Aranda, who was at Wisconsin at one point, who's now the head coach at Baylor. It just comes down to that. The jobs that are opening, the Nebraska job, the Colorado job, these jobs that are opening are going to be attractive to Jim Leonhard. And you don't want to lose one of the top young coaches in college football. I just think it comes down to that. He played at Wisconsin. He played in the NFL. This guy's had some of the best top ranked defenses. He's a big part of their success. And I just think the administration's like, all right, before this guy gets it, we don't want to lose this guy and him go somewhere else and beat us later on. And I just think that's what it came down to. They knew time was running out on Jim Leonhard's clock. He's going to be a head coach soon, and they may as well make him the head coach now. So,
yeah, I agree 100%. It's about Jim Leonhard. It's a shame because, Paul Chryst is a perfect fit for them. I mean, he's an offensive line coach. He's a hard-nosed running game guy. His personality seems to fit. They had both for however many years, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And, I guess the administration felt if one had to go, they wanted to keep Leonhard. We'll see if it's the right decision or not. Chryst will be okay. I'm sure he has.
He'll get one of those other jobs. Probably.
Yeah. He's probably trying to get the Nebraska job right now so he can go back up to Madison and beat their ass.
Yeah.
Good
luck with that, though.
Well, the thing that surprises me really, Mark, though, is that Paul Chryst played quarterback at Wisconsin. It's not like he's not part of the family and he's winning ball games. I understand the whole Jim Leonhard thing.
It also doesn't help Pat that he got beat by Brett Bielema like he did a former Wisconsin. Like sometimes that could ruffle some feathers with people inside that administration. Who knows?
I bet Brett applied for the job. He had his most success at Wisconsin. I bet he's going to try to get that job too.
Well, yeah, good luck with that.
I would too. But listen, here's my thing on it. And listen, you guys are right. Jim Leonhard's the hot name and an assistant. I just think that when you're a Power 5 program that's been successful as Wisconsin has, and you have a proven head coach, bringing in a head coach that's never been a head coach before is a calculated risk, right? There's a lot more that goes on. You're responsible for a lot more things on and off the field than you are as an assistant. Interesting move. I wouldn't have done it, but there's a reason they did it. And
here's the other factor too. You got to consider. You look at Chris' personality versus Leonhard's personality, and of course fundraising and public relations and all that stuff is such a big part of it now. Your ability to attract NIL dollars, all that stuff. Chris is not the most bubbly guy. And that might have been a consideration too. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
And if you look at their schedule, all right, there's not a lot of wins on that schedule for Wisconsin. So if they also go out and have a bad year, all of a sudden you got to fire everybody. It's harder to convince people to take Leonhard if the team's 3-9. If he's already there and they continue to struggle, hey, he's already the head coach. I don't know. There's a lot to go into it. I wouldn't have done it, but I could see why they did it.
Or maybe they were motivated by Georgia Tech's win over Pitt after getting rid of Jeff Collins.
There you go.
So,
automatic win.
New coach round. There you
go. We predicted that.
By the way, we have predicted. Listen, I think it means we might know a little bit about what we're talking about, that we understand a little bit of the lay of the land in college football as it comes to coaching. And you'll see, these are things that you unfortunately feel bad about being right about, but this is a new day in college football where the guys are getting fired every week. It's gotten like the NFL, where if you're not winning by a certain point in the season, they just get rid of you. Now, I want to say that we've got 5 Power 5 jobs currently open, and there's more coming, and we're going to take a guess at who one of those might be here in a few minutes. But if you were a head coaching candidate, would you want Nebraska, Arizona State, Georgia Tech, Wisconsin, or Colorado? I think it's easy. It's Wisconsin. They're established. They win year in and year out. They play on a easy side of the Big Ten. Whether it stays divisionless or keeps to the division, I don't know. But to me, that's the most established program of the 5.
It is. It's definitely Wisconsin. I mean, Nebraska is right now. It's so hard to recruit in Nebraska.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like it was back in the '90s where they had a distinct advantage of being able to attract certain kinds of players. They don't have that advantage anymore. Georgia Tech, you're in the middle of SEC country, fighting against Auburn, fighting against Georgia, fighting against all them. That's really hard to recruit to Georgia Tech with the restrictions that they have. And Colorado and Arizona State in the Pac-12, where they're losing their 2 top programs, 2 of their top programs anyways, in USC and UCLA. What's that league going to look like moving forward? That's going to be
easy.
Hard.
Easy.
It'll look easy.
Well,
I always wonder.
But you still have Washington and Oregon to contend with.
I know where you're going, JP. Listen, I lived in Colorado. I really like Boulder. I don't understand how they're this bad. Like, it's not a bad, why they can't be a Boise State. I mean, Boise State's successful, and trust me, there's a lot more to do in Boulder and Denver than there is in Boise. Like, to me, go after Chris Peterson. He's already coached at Boise State. He's already won in that West Coast. He's a great coach. I'm sure I've heard he wants to come back in. I don't think it's a hard school to win at. I really don't.
I think they hire Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah.
It's like almost the law, right? Somebody's going to have to hire him at some point.
Right? He played there. And
yeah. That back when they won their national championship.
Hey, JP,
I always thought Colorado was a great. I mean, I spent a lot of time out there in Breckenridge. It's the most beautiful place in the world. I love Colorado. They got the legalized weed. Boulder's a beautiful city. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they
you don't have to worry about drug testing with your football.
Exactly. I mean, come on.
I got a great Colorado story.
They've raised the level of THC you can have in the NCAA has. So they've adjusted that.
Great Colorado story. Here you go. So I'm going there to scout Miami. We had an open date. And I was a grad assistant, and they flew me to Colorado to scout the Miami-Colorado game back in the 90s, right?
That's the game they got in the big old fight.
Oh, don't steal my thunder. So I go down. I'm on the field, and I had a buddy that coached at Colorado. I think it was Tim Hort. I'm not sure. Anyways, I had a buddy that coached at Colorado. So I'm down on the field during warm-ups. Well, the locker rooms are on the same side of the field, and Colorado's already down on the field doing their stretching. And here comes the Miami guys out of the locker room, and they go right through the Colorado warm-ups. And they're talking back, touching guys, as they're walking through. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, hey man, there's going to be a problem here. If they're coming in and out of the same side, there's going to be a problem. Sure enough, when they came out, they did what they did. And it got the tensions up, and I'm up in the box watching the game, and all of a sudden, boom, the fight breaks out, right? Michael Westbrook, who was like a 3rd-degree black belt, got Darren crying in the end zone doing round kicks and punching them. And I mean, they got another guy down on the ground. I mean, just pure melee. But I totally predicted that was getting ready to happen. I knew I saw it, and I predicted it, and I told my guy that, and sure enough. And now all of a sudden, now you have the rule about fighting, and the guys are suspended for however many games if they're kicked out of the game and all that stuff. So I was there, and I predicted that fight.
I remember Kevin Patrick telling me. Kevin Patrick played on that Miami team. I remember we worked together for 7 years at South Florida. I remember him telling me about that that he said it was crazy. He said he's never been a part of anything like that in his life. That was absolutely nuts.
They should have been smoking more. Nobody gets in a fight when they're high.
That's before weed became fat.
Yeah.
All right. So now we need to go to the. We really need a sponsor for this. It should be Maytag or some kind of a stove or appliance company, even Traeger. Our biggest hot seat game of the week picks. All right, boys. USF is not a Power 5 job, but it's a really good group of 5 jobs at Cincinnati. Jeff Scott is 2 or 3. It was only won about 4 games since he's been there.
22 outside of the COVID year.
They had a bad showing against East Carolina, down 41-7 last weekend. Things don't get easier. Go to Cincinnati. Then the other 2 hot seat games were Louisville at UVA. Can Satterfield survive back-to-back losses to BC, then this week against UVA? And then one that's really just a matter of time. I've got a source that tells me this is happening either this Sunday or next Sunday. Auburn at UGA. Listen, what they're doing to Brian Harsin by prolonging this thing and what they're doing to recruiting for whoever the next coach is. This is untenable. I don't understand why they haven't made this decision, but my pick obviously is going to be Auburn at Georgia. That's the hot seat game of the week. But what do you guys think?
I can tell you this: Jeff Scott's not getting, as bad as he's been, he's not getting fired in midseason. They're going to give him the whole season to see what happens. They got, I think, 7 games left. I don't know if you saw his press conference the other day, but he said that, and I love Jeff. He goes, in case everybody didn't check, in these games, we haven't been favored to win any of them. We've been a 15-point underdog, so it's not like we were supposed to win the game.
Oh God,
I'm like, dude.
That's not a good answer.
No, you gotta be competitive. I mean, part of the responsibility of a coach is to make his players.
Yeah. The reason you're not favored is
now that I just heard that, I'm laying a lot of money on Cincinnati this weekend. Thank you, Jeff. My wife's getting a new bag.
It's weird because you can't go out there and literally outplay Florida, an SEC team, and then the next 2 weeks, just you're down 41-3 at halftime. Both, I mean, this not a talent. I mean, I'm not saying they're really super talented, but they're more talented than 41-3 at halftime. I mean, come on, you got to be better than that.
Yeah, I was really hoping they looked better this past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I love Jeff, and I think they're doing a lot of good things there, and I'm shocked that they've been as bad as they've been. I thought we were going to see that team that played against Florida, and these other teams, and just defensively, they're woeful, and they've had some bad luck. There's no question about that. They've really crapped the bed in some critical moments. They've been able to move the football, but they just can't get any results whatsoever. But
they've had a lot of guys hurt too, haven't they, JP?
Yeah, they got a ton of injuries, and Jeff, they've invested in him. They don't have the money to fire him. I'll just tell you right now, they're committing all their money to the new on-campus stadium. They don't have the money to fire him, so they're hoping, for God's sake, that he can win 3 or 4 games down the stretch, and they can actually hold on to him without everybody losing their mind. But that's on him. That's on him and this team. They like him, and there's a dynamic we should talk about at another time, because I think it's a really interesting one in college football. When you bring in a transfer quarterback and you've got an existing quarterback who you've been talking about grooming, like they had with Timmy McClain, who played well, he was growing at the end of the season. And then you bring in a Gary Bohannon, which of course you do. He played at Baylor. He helped them to 9 wins last year. You're not going to say no to that, right? But does that fracture your team? Does that, Norvell had an opportunity to get some really good quarterbacks this offseason, right? Some transfers. And he decided to stick with Jordan Travis because he knows this is Jordan's team. And I think that's the right decision to make. And if there's not a huge gap in your quarterback in the guy that you might bring in, and you look at some of these transfer quarterbacks, some work, most don't. It's a hell of a decision these coaches are having to make each offseason. And I don't know how much that may have hurt USF by getting rid of Timmy McClain and then him going somewhere else. I don't know. I'm not that much inside the program, but it sure seems like these guys aren't really playing that hard at times. So,
well, the other thing I questioned, or not really questioning out what they did, but the question I have is they were one of the more active teams in bringing and transfer portal and led the nation. second or third most portal guys. You know, we talk about culture, and it's taken Mike time to get this culture built at Florida State. We're in year 3. We're finally seeing the results. I wonder, you know, when you bring in that many, I think it was 17 or 18, JP. I can't.
I think 20.
Yeah. So the number was really high. I just wonder buy-in and never really been through a 2-a-day prior, you know, the off season. I just wonder how hard it is to that those many new guys who you're counting on playing that have not been in your system. You know, listen, we knew there were going to be all kind of unintended consequences with this transfer portal, and some teams, and Fish wrote an article about it in the Osceola. There's more misses in the portal than there are hits. Florida State just happens to be one of the more productive programs through 3 years.
They've been they've been more fortunate. I looked, one of the coaches sent me a stat. All right. Of the 17 or 1800 kids that went in the portal last year in 2021, only like 30% or less ended up finding a new school. So a lot of these kids, let's be honest, the reason they're going in the portal, coaches are cutting kids and they're just not good enough. A lot of times. And I still think there's something to be said about kids quitting on a team in the middle of the season and ending the portal. I'm not a lover of the portal. I get it. FSU's hit with Verse, and they've hit with Jermaine Johnson. But if you're a kid that has put in 3 years at that school and you think it's your time to start, and now that kid gets beat out by a kid that isn't that much better than him, I don't know what it creates in that locker room, especially these coaches talking about culture and foundation and this and that. I just think you're going to see more bad than good. That's just my opinion. You know, Florida State's been very fortunate, and Norvell and their staff have done a great job getting these kids to all understand why they're bringing these guys in. But like you said, USF, McLean was playing well last year at the end of the last year. And now all of a sudden you bring in a quarterback that's, you know, is he that much better than, you know, McLean?
Not looking like it right now.
No. So then the players start to lose trust in you because you picked an outsider. And then you know, then why should they trust you as a coach, or why should you play hard when you didn't? And I agree. Like, I wasn't on the Jordan Travis. I thought they should have brought somebody else in. But you know what? Norvell made the right call. I'll say it. He made the right call because they could have probably lost the team if they brought somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
But by the same token, he brought in all these receivers, right? But I think what Mike has done a good job of bring guys that fit and make the guys that come earn their spot. You know, I think every one of the guys that have played that we've had in the transfer portal has had to show it and earn their spot, because kids aren't dumb, right? They can look around and say, you know what, this guy's playing by virtue of him being a name versus he earned his right to play and get the minutes on the field.
But I think the wide receiver position at FSU was so bad. And there was so little production. Like, Mike's like, listen, I'm bringing these guys in. If you're good enough, you'll compete with them and you'll beat them out. And but I agree. It's a different dynamic than the quarterback's a lot different dynamic that you're bringing in. He better be darn good, because he's the guy that everybody follows. And if Bohannon's struggling, then you lose the trust of that coach, and that's a different dynamic than FSU had a bunch of receivers that never produced, and most of them were on the team for 4 years. It's a lot different.
And you know? Fish, I think just like you said, offensive line's about, you got to sign a number and find, you know, weed them out as you go. I think the same thing happened with FSU. I think they said, listen, we got an issue at receiver. We're going to bring in 4 or 5 guys, and, you know, we got to hope that 1 or 2 of them hit. They've got lucky, and well, we'll see with Span. And, you know, if they ever get
it was so bad at receiver. What could they do? Like, what were the kids on the team going to do?
100%.
It's a totally different thing. Or
that's my point. The kids on the team aren't dumb. Right. They know that they need help in certain areas, and if guys come in with the right attitude, it's not handed to them.
And if you look, I think Wilson and Portier have benefited from them bringing those 4 other guys in. They've got up their game. Like, they now know, hey, if I want to play, I've got to earn it. I'm not going to just be handed the job, you know?
Well, and they're getting more opportunities because these guys are focusing on Wilson and Bowman. I mean, it's opening up. They're getting coverage opportunities where they're getting single coverage that in the past they might not have gotten. So it's goes back to my favorite thing.
I mean, the one area I don't think it really matters, and I've told you this, if I ever ran a recruiting room, the one thing I've always would do is bring in numbers on the O-line, D-line. I don't believe you could sign enough guys up front. I think if Alex wants to bring in 5 guys every year, Norvell should sign off on it and say, hey, you got 5. You can, they get hurt. Guys end up having career injuries. You lose. I mean, look at, Lovett went down. You know what? There's certain guys, like there's a guy at Illinois right now, this kid that was from Clearwater that wanted to come last year. If that kid had come in, you wouldn't have had a loss, with Lovett going down. You could never have enough O-line and D-line. I don't care what anybody says. I say bring in it. If 10 want to come in a year on the D-line, you bring every single one of them and you process kids out. You can't worry about it. It's just so you're not going to win ball games if you're not good up front. I don't care. You're just not.
Well, what's going to get interesting is if they ever go that where the 25 number doesn't matter, you just got to be at 85, and what that does for high school recruits versus transfer portal guys, and so this whole portal thing and transfer thing, and it's going to get more interesting as they keep on tweaking it. All right, got to move to game predictions. A game that we all had circled on our calendars before the season started. Number 17 TCU at number 19 Kansas. Both looking to stay undefeated. A game that I'm probably not going to be able to see because I guess I'm supposed to go speak at a booster function, I guess. But anyway, TCU at Kansas, both trying to stay undefeated. It's going to be a great game. 2 of the best new head coaching hires in college football. I'm sticking with Lance Leopold and number 19 Jayhawks at home. Who you got, Fish?
Oh man, Kansas has played well. I just think the magic will run out this week, and I think TCU is just a better football team on both sides of the ball. I've watched Kansas. They've had to score a lot. Their defense isn't great. They got the great quarterback, but I think the magic runs out. I think Leopold's done a great job. I'm taking TCU this week.
Yeah, I mean, as tough as it is to win in Lawrence, Kansas, I will.
Is it basketball seaing?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, if this basketball, I got KU all the way, man.
Yeah, well, I think TCU has the better overall team. I'm gonna go TCU too.
I'm gonna stick with the magic of Kansas in this one, just because just to go opposite you guys. They got something. They got something going there.
The yellow brick road. It's gonna take Kansas to another victory. Now, by the way, TCU is a 6.5-point favorite. All right, double chins at LSU, Tennessee at LSU, number 8 ranked Tennessee Volunteers at number 25 ranked LSU. Tennessee has caught on fire with Hendon Hooker at quarterback and Josh Heupel and that crazy high-powered offense. I think it's Tennessee by a lot.
At LSU.
Yeah,
but it is in the morning. It is a morning game.
Yeah, it isn't. Yeah, that is true. That's a big deal. Those Cajuns will still be hammered. So I'm gonna go LSU at home.
All right.
Yeah, me too. I'm going LSU at home. I think I think LSU is starting to build some momentum. Big win last week, coming from behind. So yeah, I'm gonna go LSU.
Well, it's Fish. Who you got?
Listen, I have a ton of respect for, Brian Kelly and what he'll do there, but I just think Tennessee being more established program, I think they got that thing rolling right now. I like the Volunteers to win pretty easily, to be honest with you.
Yeah, this is one of those weird ones where Tennessee is a 3-point favorite, but the ESPN Football Power Index gives LSU a better shot to win.
Yeah. I mean, Odd Sharks, which I look at a lot of what they do is computer stuff. They have Tennessee winning 38-27. So,
yeah. Who's you got? Tennessee or LSU?
Tennessee.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that could go a lot. I can't see LSU scoring 28 points. But
how the hell can some keyboard nerds figure out and factor in those crazy ass Cajuns even in the morning, spitting all over them? I'm sorry.
They throw that thing in a computer and it plays the game 100 times, and it's an average score. That's all it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Arkansas, who is now unranked, at number 23 Mississippi State. Mike Leach was had a great day. He beat Alabama, Texas A&M last week, and then had a great post-game press conference where he's giving marital advice on eloping to Elisa Lang, the SEC sideline reporter. And we said we wanted to see the winner of whoever that was going to be the press conference game of the week, and Mike Leach won both, the game and the press conference, post-game press conference. He's a crazy man, but listen, I love Sam Pittman. Hard to go against the offensive line coach, but I'm going to go with Leach just because I want a classic presser again.
Yeah, I like. By the way, the presumed groom in that marital bliss, Tampa Bay Trey, is a friend of mine, so he's been getting a lot of pub this week, and I'm like, dude, elope. He's right. Don't let her plan that wedding. You're out of your freaking mind. Get out of there.
Oh, is marriage the only thing you guys talk about in Tampa Bay these days?
Pretty much. I mean, you know, what else? What else are we going to talk about? Certainly not Rays baseball. Yeah, I like Mississippi State this week again. Ring the cowbells.
Yeah, you know, the one thing about Mississippi State is they're consistently inconsistent. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say Arkansas is going to pull the upset here, going down to Starkville.
Fish.
This could go either way. I don't really have a play in this one. I'll take Mississippi State just because they're at home and they seem to play better at home than they do on the road. I'll take the Bulldogs in this one, but I'm not comfortable pulling for them so this week.
All right. Well, we're going to move over to the left coast for a few minutes. Number 11, Utah. At number 18, and I believe undefeated UCLA, as Chip Kelly is getting the Bruins primed for a move to the Big Ten, hitting their stride at the right time. The Utes are tough. UCLA got a lot of confidence in the big game they had the other night. I can't remember who they beat, but it was a fun one to watch. TTR went crazy in that game. Who you got in Utah versus UCLA, JP?
Yeah, I'll go with my old UCLA Bruins shirt that I got when I was a kid. It's done me well, so I'm sticking with the Bruins.
Fish.
UCLA, man, they are a very good football team. I after I watched them last week, they got the quarterback going, the running game. They're very good on defense. I'm gonna take UCLA to win this game.
Mark.
You know what? I'm gonna go with Utah, punching them in the mouth, and UCLA not handling it real well. So I'm going Utah.
Well,
the Mormons beat up the pretty boys.
Coaches, I wish there was a way they could end in a tie, but they can't. So I'm going to go UCLA.
Wow, man! I'm just looking at all the trends. Every trend is Utah's favor. Oh man, 11-1 the last 12.
And you're the trends guy.
Oh man, you know what? I'm switching my pick. I'm taking Utah, man.
Yeah, they're gonna punch him in the mouth.
Yeah.
So we got 2-2, so it's a good game. All right, so now we're going to move back towards our side of the country. Virginia Tech at Pitt in a bounce back game for Pitt, who somehow lost to Georgia Tech last week, and I have not watched that game, and I do need to go back and watch it. But listen, I think Pitt's too good on defense. Virginia Tech's offense has struggled. I'm going to go Pitt here big.
Yeah, what the hell happened with Georgia Tech? And that's but I saw that result and I was like, what the F?
Well, they probably did not have to lift weights or do all those crazy TheraBand exercises on the sideline before the game that old Jeff Collins had them doing.
Yeah, that can be a big difference, no doubt. But yeah, I think Pitt a bounce back game this week, no doubt.
I don't know. I have no feel on this one whatsoever. That Pitt result, like JP said, just boggled my mind. Nobody saw that coming. Yeah, you know what? I'll say Pitt on a bounce back. I think that was probably an anomaly.
Fish.
Virginia Tech's a very bad football team, and I do not believe in taking bad football teams. I still think Pitt's a pretty solid team that just had a bad week. It happens in college football. We talk about it. It's hard to get up every week. I think Pitt will pretty much handle them in this game.
All right. Well, then this should be the week that Miami finds its offense because it welcomes Gene Chisholm and North Carolina defense to town. And I'm sure that Gene Chizik wakes up every Sunday morning wishing that he was at the SEC Network Studios instead of the defensive staff room. Listen, I don't know exactly what's going on at Miami, but listen, they're at home. UNC is awful on defense. Tyler Van Dyke at one time was the best quarterback in the ACC, at least through one game of this year. I got to think Miami gets back on, gets a win at home.
I'm going Miami on this one. I mean, God's sakes, after Middle Tennessee State, they've got they're really going to build a stadium down there for this team. Really, yeah, they better beat North Carolina. They better score 60 because Appalachian State scored 61.
Fish, this is your sweet spot here.
Yeah, I just listen. North Carolina's defense has been terrible all year. The one way an offense gets healthy is they play a bad defense. They haven't stopped anybody. I mean, I think Georgia State ran up and down the field, and I still believe it. Miami does have better talent than Georgia State. I expect Miami to get a healthy offense going and pull a win this weekend.
Not me. I'm saying North Carolina comes out and Drake May goes ballistic and throws for a bazillion yards, and they win the game in a lackluster Hard Rock Stadium. I say they pull the upset.
Well, all right. Well, this game is another game I never thought I'd pick, but I got to give them credit. They've struggled the last 2 years, but they're 4-1 with a chance to get 5-1 and a win away from bowl eligibility, and they're taking on one of the hottest teams in the ACC over the last 7 days. Duke at Georgia Tech. Fish, who you got?
I think Elko's done a great job at Duke. They're playing who again? Georgia Tech?
The hottest team in the ACC over the last 7 days.
Yeah, you can say that. I'm not going to say that. I think Elko's doing a good job. And I really like the Riley Leonard kid that plays quarterback at Duke. I think Duke's going to win the game. I can't believe I'm saying that in football, but I'm picking Duke.
I think the new coach bump is over at Georgia Tech, and I'm going with Duke.
And they said it wouldn't last, and they were right. Duke.
Yep, I'm with you. We probably just jinxed them, but I'm with you. I'm going Duke all the way. All right, in a game that everyone on earth that follows college football has been waiting on, the war of words is over. And now Jimbo takes probably the worst team he's had at Texas A&M to Alabama, which is as good as usual. And I listened to a little bit of Nick Saban's press conference on Monday or Tuesday. Can't remember what day it was. He seems a little bit more prickly than normal. I think he's looked forward to this game, and I think he's ready to. I think he's going to give Texas A&M a rather large spanking. What do you guys see happening in Tuscaloosa on Saturday?
Ass whooping. And I'm watching every freaking minute of Jimbo Fisher cry and whine on the sideline. I hope if they were offering a Jimbo Fisher whine cam, I'd be watching it the whole entire game, because that's it. I can't wait to see him get his ass kicked. And I don't think I've ever said that about a Nick Saban team, but go get him, Nick.
All right, Fish, what do you got?
I ain't picking Jimbo this week. I like the guy and everything, but I'm not going out on that ledge, man. Alabama.
Yeah, in Tuscaloosa, with all the stuff circling around this game. Again, the one thing that kind of gives you pause is they lost their quarterback, but it's just Alabama's just got too much, and Texas A&M kind of looks impotent. I'm going to Alabama all the way on this one.
You don't think that they have a loop running in the Alabama locker room about what Jimbo Fisher called their coach, their man they love so much, especially all those nasty, ugly linemen that he loves so much, and they love Nick so much? They are going to annihilate Texas A&M.
Listen, Jimbo's just going to call him Coach Satan because Texas A&M is getting ready to go to football hell in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night. I mean, listen. I don't know that I would think that he will run up the score as high as he can, regardless of what it is. He's going to have more people. He's going to have all that oil money pissed off on Saturday night, and I'm here for it. I'm on board. I wanted to run it up. I was born in Alabama. Father played in Alabama. First favorite team. Got my little Bear Bryant thing over here. Let's go. Roll Tide. All right.
Roll Tide.
All right, so here we go. The most important game of the week. Florida State at NC State. NC State, a 3-point favorite at home at night. Now, 3 points gets you a home field game gets you 3 points in Vegas. So it's basically a pick'em game. Again, can't stress this enough. Florida State, big play offense. NC State, not a big play or a team that limits defense. That's strength against strength. Fish, who you going with in this one?
Oh man, it's tough to do because I think Florida State's a better team, but I just think being on the road, I don't like them going up to play at NC State. It's always been a rough game. I'll say 20-17, the Wolfpack. Hopefully, my son always says I jinx teams, so hopefully this jinx NC State and Florida State wins the game. So I'll make my son proud on this one.
I can't remember the last time we played well in Raleigh, and that's with good teams. I'm not saying this is not a good team, but after what I saw last week, and the injuries that Florida State has right now, I hate to pick against my Noles, but I think this is going to be a tough one for them to win.
What you got score-wise?
I'll go 21-13, 21-17. NC State.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Well, I mean, NC State, I said it last week, they're the master of the dark arts. Dave Dorn is the anti-Bobby Bowden. You know, he whines and complains and gesticulates on the sideline and all that stuff he does. And, you know, they're chippy and, you know, the crowd's nasty and they're going to come out ready for a fist fight and we're going to come out and match that. And, you know, we got injuries and all that, but I'm not picking against the Noles. Hell no. I'm going 21-17. Noles, we missed 2 field goals and still win the game.
All right. Hope you're right.
We're going to overcome adversity within the game to win a game. We've seen that before. Listen, I said it last week. I said at the end of the day, as bad as Florida State played, they had a chance to tie that game, and late in the fourth quarter, got totally dominated in the first half and fought back from it. I think we've learned now that the resolve that Mike Norvell has installed in these kids is real. I did not realize that NC State was so bad on offense until I got into my research. I knew they were really good on defense. Something's got to give. Either Florida State's going to make big plays or NC State's going to give them up, one of the two. Listen, I think Florida State can bounce back from their defensive performance. Like they do not have the playmakers on NC State's offense that Wake Forest does. I am going 24-18 Florida State. So we're 2-2 again.
All right.
So we'll see. Now, listen, it's going to be quite a test, but
You have little faith.
what's that?
You have little faith.
Yeah,
down the bottom part of that screen there.
This is what makes this fun. We all see things differently, and
well, I have to make my picks with my head, not my heart. So you know, I'm just going with what I saw, what I've seen.
Yeah. Well, I see both sides of it. I do. I can see it. I can see it very easily. Where if Florida State does not shore up its issues at the line of scrimmage, this could be an ugly game.
That's right.
If NC State,
that's what I'm worried about.
If NC State comes out and runs for 170 yards like Wake Forest, I mean, it's probably
no shot.
No shot. They can't give up 170 yards.
Yeah, no, I mean, then that score is
never have the ball. Defense would be toast.
But listen, right now. I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. We've seen this team respond. I'm thinking it's going to respond in this game. And right now, I think they're. I think also we all know it's quarterback driven, right? In college football, pro football anymore. And right now, I think Jordan Travis is having a better season than Devin Leary. So,
well, we'll see if the objective analysts get it right or the homers get it right this week. We'll see.
That's right, JP. That's right. Hey, I can honestly say this. That's the first time I've ever been accused of being a homer.
JP, I hate analytics, especially in football. These guys, you know, it's like sometimes you look at the game, you let your eyes dictate what you've seen. Like, you know, you got beat up front last week. You got beat up front.
Yes.
Analytics, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
You could tell me whatever stat you want. If you got punched in the mouth up front and you lost, you lost. Who cares? You know, it's just
That's
the
right.
way.
But like
That's
Norvell
right.
says, it's how you respond. And this
That's
team,
right.
That's right. That's
just
How
the
you
way-
respond.
right? It's how you respond. I think we're going to come out and we're going to throw some haymakers, man.
Hey,
Hey,
when I
we're-
picked
we're-
against
we're
them, they
putting-
won every game. So
We're putting
I
back
picked-
on those stormtrooper outfits, and we're coming out firing, baby.
Are we?
I don't know. I don't know. We're
all
one
right,
and,
boys.
we're 1-0 on the road and all white. Why don't we go for 2-0?
Yeah.
All right,
All right,
guys. I appreciate it as always. JP, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to you next week.
Going to the Davis Island Coffee Bar and get some more scoop.
Please let us know. Please let us know what you hear. Fish,
All right.
thanks for joining us. Stay safe and get healthy down there in South.
Okay.
And then Mark, as always,
Peace out.
you get to sign us off.
Hey, go Noles, baby.